Okay. All right. So welcome
Super.
to the last uh, Chat and Chill Cafe for this season. Uh, yes, we are stopping until September. Are you going to be able to survive with us, Danny? No, no, I know. You are one of our faithful. Yes.
Yes,
Um,
Danny's feeling very sad today. I know.
yeah. But the thing is that lots of people right now are busy with exams and
Yes.
things, and summer is
Yeah.
coming, and
Hmm.
so I think that it's usually it's when we
And
stop, and we are going to be back September, October, more or
yeah,
less.
the good thing is we will be back. So that's okay.
Yeah. And today we have with us our friend, my dear friend Neil Mason, a Welshman who drinks mate and speaks
Oh yeah,
Spanish.
yeah.
Um,
I can
and
understand Spanish.
so uh, Neil is an experienced mentor, and he's going to tell us all about mentoring, coaching, and all the misunderstandings and misconceptions that we have around mentoring
Mhm.
and coaching. So, Neil, the floor is yours.
And some of the understandings.
And some of the understandings.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you a little bit of background of my journey to this point in terms of, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but I'm not going to go into the whole lot. Um, I have always, it took me a long time to figure this out, but I've always been a mentor. I mean, and I've always had mentors. I
Mm.
just, I knew the word, but I didn't actually associate it to myself until about 2012. So it's quite late. It was just something natural that came to me. So after 2012, I'd said, like I said at the beginning, I lived in Portugal from the time I was 23, and I moved back to the UK because of my aging parents at 58. So it's a long time in Portugal. Um, so I realized after teaching English for many years, I would make friends with my students. Some of my students were 7, 8 years old, and I'd still kind of make friends with them when I was in my 20s. It's depressing that some of those. I met one recently, last time I was in Portugal in March, and he has 7 or 8 year old kids now. And he was 7 when he started as my student. So it's like, oh, um,
I know that feeling.
you know the feeling, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Um, maybe Valerie hasn't got that feeling yet, but it might come in the future.
Yeah.
But so I always built relationships with my students. The older teenagers, like the 15, 16, 17, 18-year olds, I lived at my school was next to a cafe, so we'd always go to the cafe and hang out. So we'd like have something before classes started, and then the evening classes when they were adults coming for evening classes, and we'd go to the cafe afterwards and we would hang out and have a beer and a conversation and stuff. And these relationships went over many, many years. I just shared with a friend of mine just this week that one of my old students in his PhD, there's a paragraph thanking me, and I was like, "Whoa!" Um, because we've been friends for over 30 years. We used to go to the cafe together all the time.
Yeah.
So he was saying more in what he learned in English, but it was through the relationship, really. So I only equated this to being something which I would associate to mentoring, as I said in 2012. And so I thought, if this is something that's intuitive, if this is something that just is part of me, then maybe I should kind of, be more intentional about it, and maybe I should study. At the same time, a friend of mine was studying mentoring and coaching in Oxford Brookes, in the UK, German friend of mine. So there was this other word, coaching, as well. So there's coaching and mentoring. So that's when my journey started. In 2015, I did a postgrad certificate in the University of Gloucestershire in mentoring and coaching in educational contexts. 2013, I did just this simple coaching course that I just found a coaching course, and it was called Wake Up to Coaching. So it was kind of an introduction. Didn't like it very much. Thought it was too fluffy. Kind of nothing really, which is why then I wanted to study academically. Then I did a course, 2017, I did a course as part of an ONG that I work with. And they were creating a coaching academy. So I was the first cohort on the coaching academy. So that was like a 1.5 year course. Then I qualified with the International Coaching Federation, which ICF, which is very widely known worldwide for coach training, coach credentialing. It's not that kind of thing, I do this, so therefore I'm a coach, because it's like anybody can say they're a plumber. You don't have to prove, but you could do a bad job. Nobody has to prove they're a coach. It depends, a client can have somebody who calls himself a coach, or you can get somebody screaming and shouting on the stage, and calls themselves a coach. But I went down a more evidence-based, serious approach to discovering what coaching was all about. After I'd credentialed with the ICF, which is in 2021, I did the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. So I qualified with them in 2021 as well. So both of those credentials renew. One of them, ICF, renews every 3 years. EMCC renews every 5 years. And next year they coincide. So I have to do renewal of both.
Both of them.
Wow. Yeah, both of them. So my third renewal for ICF, and my second renewal for EMCC. Then I did everybody in the UK. So if you're from the UK, you might be aware of what the ILM is, in the Institute of Leadership and Management. And they do leadership courses, management courses, coaching and mentoring courses, and so on. So I did a level 7. I did a level 7 senior leaders and executive coaching with ILM. And currently I have, because I'm just a sucker for punishment, I enrolled last year in a master's in psychology of mental health and well-being to add to that. So I've gone down, I really, really dug into it. At the app, I don't know if you know what APPI is, for those, yeah. I'm sure some of you do, or some of the people have talked about APPI. Yeah. So APPI in Portugal, 2013, I wrote an article in the newsletter about the emotionally intelligent teacher. In 2014, I did a session at the APPI conference. I don't know if you were there then, Annie, called Prozac for breakfast and Xanax for supper. And I think I'm going to build on that for next year, because that was 14 years ago.
Wow. Yeah.
So these are areas that,
I think it was then that we met.
It may have been.
I think it was then that we actually met. Yeah, I mean, I had seen you at APPI.
Yeah, that was
but I think that was when we actually started chatting and
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as I found out you were from Argentina, I mean, that would be the where's the mate? Where's the mate?
Yeah, where's the mate? I was going to take the mate to Aveiro this year, and you didn't.
I wasn't able to go.
Yeah.
Lisbon next year.
Okay, I will take the mate to Lisbon next year.
Please do. So that's kind of my thing. I always find it very difficult to explain what it is I do, because people say, "Oh, what do you do?" Because I've taught English, I've wrote textbooks, I'm working in the coaching and mentoring space. I work in 2 academies. One of them is based in South Africa, and the other one is international. So we're an international team ranging from Malaysia, several areas of Europe, South America, like Ecuador, the one guy's from, South Africa, and and our cohorts, we've got 15 in our cohort, and there's somebody from Mongolia, somebody from Australia, somebody from a Brazilian living in Chile. We're all over the place. So very, 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 very international. I'll give you one example. We had one of the cohorts, 2 cohorts ago, girl called Elizabeth, and she's Pakistani, trained as a nurse, and she lives in Tajikistan. So she was there from Tajikistan. Wow. We get these blends of people, or Korean living in Nepal, So yeah, very, very intercultural, but I'm also an intercultural specialist. So I've given training in companies and at the University of Porto, in intercultural intelligence, intercultural competency. So I work with a company over this last few years, training their people who moved from Monaco to Porto, and also then their wider leadership team, and then their offshore leaders on these. I call them oil platforms, but they're not. They are oil tankers that have been converted into a floating platform. And they have about 14 of them worldwide. And so I was doing the leadership teams from those as well. So there are a number of different areas that I work in. There's kind of a crossover, and the crossover would be people development. I'm particularly interested in leadership development. So that's, in a kind of a large nutshell, what it is I do. But my background since from I was 23 was in EFL. And so the connection there with APPI, and I edit the APPI journal. So if which is a newsletter, which is usually about 50-page newsletter that I design. So that's my kind of background. What's relevant, and then I have a question for you. So we're talking about, Annie published on the poster. Coaching, mentoring, tutoring, but I want to focus just for a minute on mentoring and coaching, and I want to ask you a question. What do you think mentoring is, and what do you think coaching is, and where do you think they're the same, or where do you think that they're different? So I'd like to open that up.
I would like to say that, well, actually, this topic is very gripping to me, and I find it very profound, and I believe that there are a lot of knowledge which we can discover, but of course this knowledge can be gained only through the experience. And currently actually I'm teaching a lot of students who are across Europe, and I see that a lot of them need some support because they need to meet some academic contexts, and also to meet their work requirements. They need English to pass some international exams as well. And I feel that sometimes they feel frustrated. And I believe that perhaps in these specific situations, when they are lost on their way and they don't know, like every day they think, I'm not progressing in English, and okay, I'm stuck with it. And I guess perhaps there can come, like teacher can come and support at that moment, and be kind of a mentor, to say that, okay, that's fine. You just need to be more patient, step by step. You will move on, you will move forward. Just believe that even these little moments where you're progressing and where you're learning, for example, a new word or a new phrase, they will contribute immensely in your success and in your learning journey. So, and I guess that when they hear from another person that that's totally fine to make mistakes and learn from them and move on, and after some time, if they look back and they see that, oh, okay, I have learned so many things already, they, at that moment, I would say they start discovering that, oh, finally I'm progressing, I feel that.
Okay. Valerie, just out of curiosity, where are you from?
Well, I'm originally from Ukraine, but I
Okay.
moved, and currently I'm based in Chile.
In
Wow.
Chile,
Chile.
Chile.
yes.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know you were in Chile.
So I have been living here for 1 year.
Wow.
Wow.
So
Fabulous.
it's quite early for you. Okay. Yeah, I was in Ukraine doing intercultural training for a team, multinational team in Odessa. Interesting. I have a lot of Ukrainian friends. I don't know if anybody knows, but Ukrainians, okay, you can go like this, Valerie can talk about Ukrainians. You can't talk about toilet things with Ukrainians generally, because it's a taboo. It's a very embarrassing taboo. So guess what I did in the intercultural training? Got a roll of toilet paper out, which shock and horror from the Ukrainians, which the Australians and the Swiss and the South Africans enjoyed very, very much. Okay, nice.
Well,
what would you other people say? So Valerius talked about the context of teaching and supporting students, a little bit more than just the academics, but also in their frustration and their anxiety and the support that you can give them through that part of the process of learning. What else would you guys say?
Lucy put in the chat, good question. I'd say mentoring is more global, like a tutorship, and goes further than coaching, which is more specific.
Okay. Okay, that might sound confusing to some people, but I understood perfectly.
Don't say never. I'm never good at making things.
Sorry. Now, I've discovered that mentoring it continues, because my mentees, they're still in touch with me after 4 or 5 years. They still contact me, they still ask for advice. So I feel that it's a much more profound contact with my mentees than maybe a coach has. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm mistaken. I think it's more long-term mentoring. Okay. Yeah, because they're always in touch still, and I find that really gratifying as well. Yeah. So I love it. Yeah.
Also, I think that I don't know. I see coaching more as a facilitator for very specific things, whereas a mentor is maybe something like a trusted advisor.
Yeah, I agree.
Somebody who is not going to tell you how to do things, because that is something that you have to discover for yourself, but is somebody who's there to support you and to share experiences, perhaps, and maybe to guide you in a way without leading you.
Yes, you're encouraging them, guiding them, and they always come back for help in some way.
That's how I see ourselves, for example, in the EVE mentoring program.
Yeah, exactly.
We are not telling the teachers who take the program what to do and how to do it.
Exactly.
We are listening. We are offering guidance without imposing our views.
Exactly. Yep.
Helping them find their own way. That's what I feel a mentor is.
It's wonderful. And as I said, it's more long term, because they keep coming back. And I love this. So come back for advice, for encouragement. So last year I encouraged 2 or 3 of my mentees to speak at the EVE conference, which they did. Yeah, and I met a mentee from Serbia from 4 years ago, and she came forward, and another 2. So
well, really, you know, my mentee on this program we are doing now, Elizabeth, she's planning to submit a proposal for a TEFL next year. She has already asked me if I will be there, and I told her I will. And so yesterday, she wrote to me and she said, listen, even if this is not part of the program, would you help me prepare the proposal and be there for me when I present it? I said, of course.
Yeah, it's wonderful that they keep coming back and asking, for more assistance, advice, whatever. I love that. Yeah.
Danny.
It's an interesting question. I consider Mario Involucri as I've always classified him as my main teaching mentor. Now, I don't know whether he was happy about that definition, but basically he was the first teacher I met, teacher trainer, that inspired me to teach in a particular way.
Wonderful.
When I wrote my very first article, and I've written obviously a lot more since then, when I wrote my very first one, he was willing to kind of go through it with me and rip it apart and get me to rewrite it and all the rest of it. And, you know, various other things. Whenever I had a problem, I called him. He would always answer the phone. And yeah, lots of stuff like that. But I wouldn't call him a coach, because I don't think he really had the time to be a coach. He was too busy teaching and teacher training and creating ideas and writing and whatever. So
he was fabulous.
Yeah, so I've got an idea of what I think a mentor is. I'm not completely sure what a coach is, because like you said, Neil, before, lots of people call themselves coaches in you know, do lots of different things.
In fact, too many of them.
Yeah, probably,
Yeah.
Okay, so, I mean, the thing is, it is very difficult to define, and there is no consensus. Which means you basically can come up with your own ideas. And I think if you're involved in a program, you know, if it's something which is formal, like you're talking about having a formal program where you buddied up with somebody who's going to be a mentor, you can call them a coach, you can call them a mentor. It's fine. There's a lot of overlap. And I think in some contexts that I've been in, and one of my friends, when we were talking about it about a decade ago, what he called a coach, I would call a mentor, and what I called a coach, he would call a mentor, and what I called a mentor, he would call a coach. Who's right? Both of us. So in APPI, I did a course. I did it about 10 different times over a number of years, and I'm probably going to put it again for this next academic year. Mentoring in schools. So the idea of the mentoring in schools is that I teach the course, the teachers learn about mentoring and the mentoring program that they're going to develop in their schools, and they decide. A lot of what they do is peer mentoring, which is getting the kids to mentor the kids. So maybe they're like a class up, or in Portugal it works in cycles. They call them cycles, which is like 5th and 6th grade is a cycle, 7th, 8th and 9th is a cycle, 10th, 11th and 12th is a cycle. And so you get students from the one cycle will mentor the kids in the cycle below. But I said this to Annie last week, you know, it's like Shakespeare. What's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So the first thing I think that we need to do is, if we are involved in something where we decide that there's going to be some kind of support system, we define who those people are. And we define what we're going to call them. So maybe we're going to call them mentors. Okay. I remember there's a lot of mentoring programs in Portugal. I'm involved with one of them specifically, but there's another very similar program, and they call them coaches. So the person that I talked to that was doing that, I said, "Why did you choose the word coach?" I said, "Oh, because it's based on a British project which calls them coaches. So we just." And that's fine, but they're exactly the same. It's exactly the same role, exactly the same relationship. So first of all, then, it doesn't really matter. There's a couple of big names in coaching, mentoring space. I mean, there's a dozen. I could give you a dozen of them, but I'll just give you two. Bob Garvey and David Clutterbuck. Now, David Clutterbuck and Bob Garvey are two of the founding members of the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, which used to be called the European Mentoring Council, and then later on it became the European Mentoring and Coaching Council, EMCC. So they're both co-founders. There was a group of 5, I think, and they are co-founders. Both of them are professors. It's like full professors, and they were talking with each other. They were asked in interviews, what's the difference between coaching and mentoring? And I remember Bob Garvey saying, well, it depends on whose book you're reading. And it very much is the case. It depends on who you're reading. You'll get a different answer. It depends on if it's in America or if it's in Europe. Sometimes the terms are switched. Sometimes they're synonymous. If you look at a Venn diagram, there's a lot of overlap. And so any way that you will define what it means to you You're probably pretty close, and you're quite right, and that's fine. Okay, I have to define it, and even in my in my work, the group of us that work together, we try to define it just so that we can have clearer separations between what things are, because it's helpful, not because it's true. So you've all touched on parts of what that means. So I'll try to bring what you all said together in some way. Part of that, it's a relationship. And I'm going to give you a Clutterbuck quote. I like David Clutterbuck. He's just turned 79. He's written over 75 books. He's like the nicest guy. So David Clutterbuck says that mentoring is when somebody uses their wisdom to help develop the wisdom of somebody else. So I work together with somebody to develop their wisdom. So I use my wisdom to help the person develop their wisdom. So what Annie was saying, oh, we've got somebody else come in.
Yes, it's Linda.
Yael.
Linda Yael.
Where's Linda based?
In Bariloche, in Argentina.
Argentina.
Hiya.
Hello, Linda.
Hello. I'm here briefly because I'm in the Eve conference and we're on a break.
Okay.
You're so I'm sorry, otherwise I'd have been here earlier.
Hi,
okay,
Linda.
we're recording. We're recording, so you can catch up. It's okay.
Okay, yeah. I thought it'd be a pity to miss it totally, but I don't know when you started.
Nice that you popped in. Nice that you popped in.
Yeah, absolutely. At least to say hi.
Yeah.
Because one of my mentees is presenting at the Eve conference a little later.
Good.
And she's a bit scared because she's not experienced as a presenter. She has good material and so on, but
well, I'll tell you the quote that we were just talking about, and you can take this on for yourself as well. It'll be useful for you today. Which is, mentoring is when somebody uses their wisdom to help the other person grow their wisdom. So generally, when we talk about mentors, so if I'm going to separate them, let me separate them the way I separate them, but you'll see that there's overlap, and it's legitimate to have different ideas in different contexts. So with mentoring, I myself separate my mentoring now into the educational space. And so I help to develop mentoring programs in schools. So if there's a program, if you are buddied up with somebody, if it's something like you're doing, if it's in a school and somebody is kind of arranged to have mentoring, one place we worked with in Portugal, it was a music school. So they wanted the kids to have mentors. So I suggested that they took the kids who were like a higher grade, like were 15, 16, 17, mentor people who were coming in who were of the same instrument. Either the same instrument or the same area of instruments, because then they could, kind of connect. So the thing with mentorship then is the connection. And then there's this aspect then that Valerie was saying about when you may be helping out with stuff which is their schoolwork or they're learning something, or if it's in a teaching program, you're buddied up with them because you're further ahead than they are, and you're helping them. But it's that emotional support as well. So it goes beyond just the focus on the academic, and it goes into building the relationship, which then, as Elizabeth said, they come back. Years later, you've built a relationship with them and they come back, and it can last a long time. Now, those relationships, when we have a mentoring program, which is what we call a formal mentoring program. So anything which is arranged or organized is formal. And then there's informal mentoring. So the informal mentoring is where you're working with somebody, or somebody, or you have a family member, and you think, maybe they could go out for a coffee and could talk about life and stuff like that. So in my church in the UK, I'm actually the youth mentor. We don't have many youth. It's mostly old people. But we have had a few 16, 17-year-olds that have walked in, and I connect with them very, very, very quickly. But it's that idea of seeing like they need somebody who can have a conversation with them, that will ask them questions about themselves, not telling them what to do, as Annie was saying as well. It's not that directive kind of thing. However, sometimes mentor can be directive. So there's a scale of directive to non-directive. So how much do you pull out of them, help them depend on themselves, and how much do you actually give them advice from your experience and from your wisdom? And in mentoring, it's legitimate to give of your wisdom and help them and guide them and tell them is legitimate. What happens sometimes is then the mentor gets a little bit too big for their boots, and then start bossing the person around, telling them what to do, giving them advice. Oh, I think you should do this. And those are the kind of things that we want to avoid. I'm not going to do a deep dive into that, but basically, it will depend on age groups as well. It will depend on the difference in age between the mentor and the mentee. The other thing about mentoring is the mentor and the mentee are not on an equal level. It's an asymmetric relationship. And it doesn't depend on age. You can have older people being mentored by younger people, particularly if they're learning technology. Being buddied up with somebody who is helping them to learn. We have a thing in the UK called Age UK, and my father had this guy who was helping him to learn how to use Zoom. And so they built this relationship. He wasn't tutoring him, he wasn't teaching him, but he was having this relationship to help my dad feel not just that he was learning something, but there was something that he could talk to and have this kind of buddy, significantly younger than my dad. So the age thing is generally it's older to younger, but it can have the aspect of what we call reverse mentoring. And they can be the same age. So if you're aware of constructivism with like Lev Vygotsky. So if you're looking at Vygotsky, where he talks about the more knowledgeable other, it's easier to learn if you have somebody who maybe even one step in front of you, like an older brother that knows how to play the video game. And people tend to learn quicker that way. And this is the kind of relationship that can come about in mentoring. But you make those decisions yourself. So the formal mentoring, when there's a program for that, and those relationships end. They are not long-term. They come to an end. They may be for a term. I work with a group called Mentor Art, and so we train university students to mentor kids in schools. Well, next year they may not be working with us anymore. They may not be in that school, so that relationship comes to an end. They haven't built a relationship enough that they will come back years later. So the mentoring can have an end to the relationship. Informal mentoring very often lasts a longer time. In America, they have this thing called sponsoring, or actually what we in the UK we would call sponsoring, what the Americans called mentoring, is where somebody is grooming somebody to take a place, to have a specific role or come into leadership. And then that person will open doors for them, introduce them to people, use their contacts. That is somewhat of a mentoring relationship, but we call that a sponsoring relationship rather than a mentoring relationship. So there's that distinction. Coaching is if we want to have the distinction with the coaching. So the coaching attempts to have a more homogeneous leveling of the relationship. So the coach is not somebody who is telling you what to do. The coach is the coaching that I do, because there's lots of different types of coaching as well. And that's the other thing. There's sports coaching. A sports coach or an athletics coach tells their athlete or their sports person, they tell them what to do. They have the experience. They're telling them what to do. Jump this way, jump that way, do this exercise, do that exercise, do this work. It's very directive. And then you have, you've probably seen this. I was fascinated, I think it was last year, with the high jump. And you see people coming, like the pole jump. Yeah. You see people coming and running with the pole, and they like stick it in and they fly up and they miss. They hit the bar, and off comes the bar and so on. And then they rush off. And then there's their coaches aside, and they have like 2-3 words with the coach. It's a very, very short conversation. And the next time they're flying over the bar. And I'm thinking, what on earth did that coach say that made that difference? And sometimes it's technique, and sometimes it's confidence. So those secrets. So there was a guy back in the 80s who wrote a book called The Inner Game. And he was basically interested in, I think it was in tennis players, and how the inner game was what helped them to win, rather than just their ability. Their physical ability was the mental part of that as well. And so coaching kind of came out of that idea. But as it developed, it became a lot less, particularly with the ICF, the International Coaching Federation, a lot less directive. So it becomes a partnership. Now, I was even researching this a little bit today. I see different types of coaching. So I can put them into 4 different spaces. There's one which is skills coaching. So skills coaching, I need to learn a new skill. And so I need somebody who kind of helps me and trains me and helps me to learn the new skill. So that would be maybe a little bit more directive, more solution focused. I got a problem, I need to solve the problem. So I need a very specific thing that I'm going to work through. This can work with a line manager. It can work in teaching with new teachers. It can work with a more senior teacher kind of coming into the classroom and coaching. So there's an area in education called, the word has just evaporated from my brain. But it'll come to me. So there's a coaching where you have somebody who comes in, watches your class, and then they might give you pointers. So it's teacher observations, but it's not just for new teachers. This can go on for career development and for more senior teachers as well. Then there's the kind of coaching which is productivity. So it's like, how do I work with my timetable? How do I figure out productivity? How do I become more able to manage my time? And so I learn a bunch of things which have got more to do with not specific skills, but how do I put those together, and how do I develop other practical things that may be to do with very, very frequently time management, procrastination, and a whole bunch of other areas. And there's developmental coaching. And developmental coaching, I want to be a lot less directive because I wouldn't have ideas and solutions for those. And developmental coaching is somebody is saying, okay, I need to develop. I've got into this new role and I need to kind of figure out how I'm going to learn the skills now, which are different. Like I've become a CEO, and before I was the COO. So there are some skills which are not technical skills. They're more other kinds of skills, people skills. And how do I learn those things? So it's developmental, which then leads into transformational coaching. And transformational coaching, and I'm working with somebody at the moment who is doing transformational coaching, and that is he is going to be promoted to CEO, but he needs to see himself as that person, as the CEO. He needs to build an identity as a CEO. So we're talking about his awareness of self, his awareness of his pitfalls, his strengths, and then talk about get to a place where he is leaning into imposter syndrome, leaning into the areas of his own identity as he moves into this other space of being. Whereas developmental maybe, how do I work with an intercultural team? I've got 5 different nationalities on my team. How do I manage the different nationalities? That's more of developmental. But there's a connection there. So each one of those goes deeper. And my question is, and this comes from a client that I was chatting to a few years ago, and he had a coach, but he wanted to switch. And I asked him, what is the reason that you're wanting to switch coaches? And he said, I don't need somebody who's going to tell me how to do my job. So he had hired somebody who was basically telling him how to do his job. So he would bring a topic or a problem, something he was working with, and so this person was telling him the things that he would need to do. So that's going outside the coaching and then going into consulting or training or mentoring. So his thing there was, I don't need somebody that tells me how to do my job or helps me to do my job. I know how to do my job. I need to grow. So there's the difference there between mentoring. Actually, maybe, there's the skills and productivity part of that as well. So that you would call a difference between them sometimes is the pull push, whereas mentoring is push. So I give to the person, and mentoring and coaching is pull. So the coaching that I do, I'm more specialized in the developmental and the transformational. So I ask a lot of questions, and I ask people how they're thinking and what are different perspectives and how they could think about it another way. What are they learning about the situation? What are they learning about themselves? How do they, through the conversation? So I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and I said, okay, so thinking about what we've been discussing in the conversation today, what have you learned about you? How do you see yourself differently at the end of the conversation than you did at the beginning of the conversation? So we're building self-awareness in a very, very specific way. You don't do that really in mentoring. That's not something that goes into mentoring. Now, I also think that if, in my case, and the area that I work in, if I am coaching somebody and I've contracted to coach somebody, I am not going to mentor them, because that would be telling them what to do. So I contract for coaching. Then I contracted them for, they are responsible for the topic. They are responsible for what it is we're going to talk about. They are responsible for their own growth. They're responsible for the implementation. On the other hand, if I have a mentor, a mentee, then I might say, I might pick some of the topics. Some of the things that I think that they might need to address may be my choice rather than their choice. I might identify something and say, hey, maybe we need to talk about this issue. I would never do that with a coaching client. So I say, if you're mentoring, certainly do some coaching within the mentoring, which is the techniques that you use. Then there's this other difference, which is what is a coach and what is coaching. So I can be a teacher, I can be a parent, I can be a friend, and I can use techniques which might be coaching, but my relationship with the person is a different relationship. So it may be teacher, parent, uncle, aunt, whatever. I'm not their coach. When I get paid, I'm their coach. So there's those differences there. But at the same time, I'm saying that if you have a program in your school or something you want to develop and you want to call people coaches, go ahead and call them coaches. Just make sure that everybody is on the same page. Now, we did promise that there would be a third word, and the third word is tutoring. And this did come up because I think Lucy wrote the word tutoring. So with tutoring, I wrote an email because somebody had said to me that this program that I was studying when I was doing research at university, she said, I think that's not a mentoring program. I think that's a kind of study group or whatever. I think that's students helping students with their schoolwork. So we had these 9th grade students, and the 9th grade students were helping the, no, it was the 10th and the 11th grade students that were helping the 9th, the 8th and the 7th grade students with their homework, with their classwork, what they were struggling with. But they were teamed up with one person and they would help that one person. So they'd go to the school library, sit down, maybe say, I got a test next week and I don't know how to study. So it's very much, very, very close to what Valeria was saying at the beginning, which is, I've got these people that have this test, or I'm preparing them for this. And the relationship then would be much more tutoring. However, there's a mix in there of mentoring as well, because you build this relationship, you're supporting them emotionally, you end up having other conversations around that, and you build up these relationships. So all the way through my career, where I've built these friendships with my students who are now in their 40s and 50s, and I mentored them, but then they became my friends. I don't mentor them anymore. They became my friends. And one or two I've also coached because they come back and they say, could you help me talk about this? And I said, well, you don't need me to tell you. You don't need me to guide you, but I'm happy to think with you and to provoke you and to make you think deeper. So there's a distinction there. But tutoring, basically, I think in some languages, the word mentoring doesn't exist. It is the word tutoring is the word that exists. So there's a mix up between what those mean. And again, very often they are they are interchangeable, synonymous, very, very similar, a lot of overlap, but it will be depending on the program that you're involved in, what you actually call them and what that relationship may be officially. But a tutor generally is a subject expert who's helping somebody else, or somebody who's further ahead academically. And the main concern is the academic, the learning, the marks, the attainment. That is the main focus of tutoring. So what you call somebody in a program, it depends. And generally tutoring is not an informal thing. It can be where you get somebody to say, oh, can you help me with the homework? If you've got somebody who's further ahead than you are. But generally, when it's more of an informal and you build a relationship, that's more mentoring. So there's a lot of different things there. Talk to me. You say things.
I have a question, because you mentioned, and this is something that sometimes I think many of us suffer from, imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And mostly, I sometimes see myself suffering from this, because I say, what am I doing here? And I think that most of the times it's women who suffer from the imposter syndrome. You disagree?
Yeah. Men might not say it.
Oh, maybe.
I agree.
We might not own up to it.
I agree with Annie.
Absolutely.
I'm with you, Annie.
No.
I think all of us women here have probably suffered
We all suffer from this
or another.
Actually, if you look at research of the difference between men and women in a lot of different areas, you'll see. I did this study at university as well, where we're looking at procrastination in academics, in students and stuff. And so we looked at the emotions, and there are studies that pick out 5 different emotions like guilt, shame, and a bunch of other things. And the men and the women were exactly the same in the first and the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. The order of the emotions was exactly the same.
Wow.
Except the degree was slightly more on the women. And what the research shows is women are more used to talking to each other and owning up to how they feel, and men are not. And so we very often it's very similar or the same, but in a different degree, or because men shut up. They feel that if I say it, then I'm destroyed. So there is that. That would be the difference, not the feeling of the imposter syndrome itself.
Yeah. Lucy says, I'm having a real imposter syndrome crisis at the moment. And Valeria, you said, I've been investigating this topic recently because I have been feeling it recently a lot. I'm trying to struggle with it a lot because I understand that there is so much knowledge to learn and digest. Yeah.
But if you think of phrases like fake it till you make it, that comes out of imposter syndrome, and it's said just as much by men as it is by women. Maybe we pretend better, maybe we hide it better, but certainly we don't suffer from it less. I mean, I deeply feel imposter syndrome even in the area of coaching, and I've been doing it for a decade.
Yeah.
And it's something that I have to deal with. I think, hang on a second, let's have a conversation with myself about this.
Yeah, I'm thinking you just said you probably don't suffer it less. I agree, that's very likely true, but the culture supports the males and not the females. Because
we're not going to get into but we're not going to get into
all these things.
I don't want to get into the whole thing of like the difference between men and women.
That's a different conversation.
We're not having a competition of who suffers the most.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
It's just I think you have more support than we do.
I think
historically,
we would say absolutely not. But it's not seen. But it's not seen. I mean, I got a good book as well, which is
Playing Big.
Playing Big. Tara Moore.
I can't really see.
A practical guide for brilliant women like you.
Oh, fabulous.
No, I mean,
fantastic.
I do believe in myself now,
Tara
but
Moore.
it's taken decades.
Yeah.
It's taken decades.
Yeah, in fact,
Linda,
to a point where,
Linda, me too.
I can...
If we have a conversation, we sit down and we compare, you'll discover me too. Absolutely.
Okay.
But you would never have thought it, because there's a narrative. There is a narrative that, it's worse for this gender than it is for that. Bullshit.
I don't think it's intrinsically worse. I think it's culturally
You don't know what goes on. don't know what goes on behind the mask, we don't let it out. And
No,
I think
of course.
what you find is that there's a lot of, because women like talk a lot with each other, have friends,
Yes,
and
that's
they're
true.
more used to expressing and sharing with each other.
Yes.
Men don't, and we don't want that. And if you
No,
try it, we're
and
like,
also you are
let's go for a
expected.
beer.
There is also this cultural thing
Yeah.
that we expect men not to suffer from imposter syndrome. We expect men to be stronger, to know what to do. And so it can also be terrible for men to show weakness, because they are expected not to. Men don't cry.
There are
Boys don't
studies.
cry.
There are studies in terms of like if you know the big 5 personality model. So there's like 5 areas of personality, and you're either high or low, or somewhere along the spectrum of like between high and low on each one of the 5. And the acronym is OCEAN, OCEAN. O is openness, C is conscientiousness, E is extroversion, A is agreeableness, and N is neuroticism. And generally, across the board, statistically, women tend to be more agreeable, statistically, than men. And it's also shown in the research that those who are less agreeable often get further ahead professionally. Okay.
Yeah, arrogance.
Like
The people with the arrogance.
Well, it's not in all, but it's
gets
not
them
in all,
ahead.
it's not in every case. And yeah, there very much are differences in cultures.
Yeah.
But
I've
it's a completely different kettle of fish.
I've noticed in Italy this arrogance that makes them drive ahead as well. Here,
and the thing is, you have to perform that. You have to perform that, whether you feel it or not. Sometimes you have to perform that, and you have to portray that, but that's not what's going on underneath. And this is one of the things that we're learning now as well. And one of the areas for that is the coaching relationship. So if you listen to some of the conversations that I have with my coachees, and the vulnerability and the emotional, I did a head of a school, and we had conversations. He said, I've never, ever in my life had a conversation like this on this level about these topics when we're talking about emotions. And I was like, that probably wouldn't be the case with a lot of the women that I know, because they're more used to kind of huddling up and kind of and going out and talking about this stuff, whereas men don't. You hear men talking about football or sports or whatever to avoid kind of going into these vulnerable areas that they feel very, very, very scared of. And he said, I feel embarrassed about feeling this way, and it's embarrassing for me, and it's, I feel shame, but I feel safe with you to go there. And I have a few friends who are lady coaches, and they are very capable of going to the same place and having that kind of relationship, even with their male clients, which is special. It doesn't happen all the time. But the guy I was saying who's becoming a CEO, so he's being promoted, that's where we are. And it's in a very vulnerable place for him, but he feels safe because he's tested it out and he's built trust. Oh, I've built trust with him. So how do I know I built trust? Well, looking at what he shares, you wouldn't if you didn't trust. And I would love to go into the whole area of trust. How do you build trust? If you're interested in that, I would suggest that you Google Brené Brown.
Oh yes.
Brené Brown, and look at trust. So Google Brené Brown and trust, and see if you can find a video of her going through the marble jar, talking about the marble jar and how you build trust, because it's a great thing for the classroom as well. There to lead. There to lead.
Wonderful.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I mean,
I started listening to Brené Brown about 2013. 2014 is when I discovered Brené Brown. So it's like
Fabulous.
a dozen years so far.
I think that it was Rachel Roberts who suggested that we read this, and I go back to this book every now and then because it was really an eye opener.
Dare to Read.
It was an eye opener.
Could you show it, please?
Yes,
Annie?
it's Dare to Read by Brené.
Dare to Read by Brené
There
Brown.
it is.
Okay, Dare to Lead. Okay, thanks a
Read.
million.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be me if it wasn't a book push. Yeah, so specifically about mentoring, coaching, and tutoring. Is there anything which for you is clearer, different, interesting, disagree with, still have questions about? Lucy,
when you said that in some languages we don't have the word mentor or mentoring, in Italy you have to say consulente or tutor. They use the word tutor, which is not
tutoring
even
is very common in a lot of Latin languages. So the thing is there, what does the word evoke in terms of what you then think about the relationship?
In fact, yes.
So coaching itself actually comes from a Hungarian word.
Okay.
I don't know what the word is, but if you go back to where it came from, it's this idea of university students who would have somebody who would be like a tutor. And then it started to be called a coach because the coach is the vehicle which takes somebody somewhere.
Yeah,
like a bus or a coach or a stagecoach, you know, the kind of horse and coach kind of idea. And the idea was somebody that carried you and took you to where you want to go. And so they started calling them coaches, and that's where the idea came from. So it came into English from a Hungarian word, but a lot of others, tutor was the word, and that's what it meant. But it's developed, it's changed, and so these things have become more distinct in their meanings, where people try to tease out the differences. However, you have to tease out the difference for yourself, depending on which context you're working with. So if you're in a place where there's a program and they're calling them coaches, you align with what they're using. And say, okay,
exactly.
What do you mean when you say coach? Just so that I can be on the same page. And then you're working with somebody else and they're calling them mentors, and say, okay, what do you mean when you're saying mentor? Just so that we can be on the same page. And you navigate that without worrying about the terms themselves. Now, I did have a conversation with the school that I was studying that was doing a mentoring project, because they called them monitors. So I challenged the idea of what does monitor evoke in the mind of the monitor? And what it evoked was they're the boss. They call the shots.
Yes, I don't like that word.
Really?
And so we talked about, even though mentor and mentee is not an asymmetric relationship, we want it to be as close as possible, because then we don't want to get a power dynamic which is not helpful in the relationship, where the mentor thinks he's responsible for telling the person what to do. So there's this negative side as well of having to navigate that. So we always talk in the projects that I work with is to have supervision as well. Supervision as well, but that's another complicated word, because the idea of supervising is a control mechanism to supervise people to see if they're doing the right thing.
Exactly.
But that's not what supervision is in the area of mentoring and coaching. It's borrowed from psychology, and it's a support system from for the coach, for the mentor, to have somebody to talk to. Because what do you do if you have a 15-year-old who's been told by a 12-year-old that they're being bullied, or they have an eating disorder, or God forbid, there's sexual abuse? That is too heavy for a teenager to have to carry. So we also talk a lot about, in those kind of relationships, we talk about what is confidentiality, and also the rule in the relationship that not everything can be confidential. So there are some things that we might need to talk to a teacher a supervisor, somebody else.
Yeah.
But they also have to keep it quiet. So let's say we are a group of 3, 6, 7, 8 supervisors of a mentoring program in a school. A student comes to Annie and says something. Annie doesn't share it with the rest of the group. I have to decide, is it something that I can deal with, or do I have to involve a psychologist and get a psychologist in? And so I was doing this with a university group. So some of the professors in the university were going to be supervisors of the student mentors who were second and third year students who were mentoring the first year students at university, specifically because there's a lot of first year students who abandon university. So the idea was to combat this exodus of first year students. So we even talked about suicidal students, the students that come with serious mental health issues. And then one of the teachers panicked and she said, I'm not trained to deal with something like that. And we're saying, these are things that can come up anyway in a normal teaching relationship. What we're saying is that we have a structure here. So one of the supervisors was actually a psychologist, and he says, okay, so you go talk to her. She's the one who is your resource to have a conversation with. So as a coach, I have a supervisor, and my supervisor actually helps me to reflect on my coaching practice, my coaching identity, the maturity, how I'm growing, what other new areas that I can grow in and develop. How can I combat my what do you call it syndrome? My imposter syndrome, which sometimes shows its head. So yeah. And I think one of the things with coaching, which is different from mentoring, is we sometimes delve very close to therapy, but it is not therapy. None of these relationships are therapists. And even if a psychologist is coaching, you need to make a distinction between the relationship and say, while I'm coaching you, I'm not diagnosing and treating you. So if you need a psychologist, I will tell you, you might need to go to a therapist or a psychologist. Do you want me to help you to find one? And sometimes they say, can it be you? And say, if it's me, then we can't continue the coaching with me. So if you want to continue coaching, we need to find a different coach. But you can't double.
I have actually had to do that. I had to persuade a student to see a therapist, and I knew one that I could put her in contact with, and she did, and she's doing really well. Because I thought, this is not teaching. She's asking me for too much here, and I realised, and so I got her onto correct therapist for her.
So it's knowing where the boundaries are. And so, like what Valerie was saying, there's a difference between a student who has some anxiety because they've got a test and they're suffering with the anxiety from that, which is an emotion that people like to run away from. And when I have somebody who has the emotion and they've called it anxiety, I'll say, okay, why did you pick that word? Are there other words around it that you could pick up? And then the one person who was feeling very anxious, I said, how can feeling anxious actually be useful to you? So we reframed it in a positive way. And he said, I don't know. So we talked about it for a while. And it's not the emotion that's bad. I might call it a negative emotion, but it's not a bad emotion. It's just an emotion, and it's telling me a story. So what is the story that it's telling me? This is calling out for attention. So what is the actual situation that I can look at and examine? Same with frustration. So if you have a student who is frustrated because they find something difficult to learn, or they're anxious because they've got a test next week, what does that anxiety or frustration help them to do? They're quite good motivators to get the person off their butt and studying and actually getting the job done. And you can have a problem, if like those kids everything will be all right, and then they don't study and then they crash on the test. So the ones who got this anxiety about the test probably will do better academically than the ones who don't. So it's the positive emotion, which is like peace and love, is probably the worst outcome sometimes. So that's the negative outcome from a positive emotion rather than a positive outcome from a negative emotion. There's another book which I can recommend called Permission to Feel. Permission to Feel is a book written by an investigator from University of Yale. He is the director of the Yale Department for Emotional Intelligence. And he has a couple of really good tools, one of them called the mood meter and the other called Ruler, which talks about emotions, and it talks about recognizing, understanding, labeling, expressing appropriately, and regulating. So that's the acronym for ruler. And they're very, very practical tools to use in school. And they're also practical tools that I use in my coaching, but they can be used in mentoring, they can be used for teaching, they can use to measure the emotional temperature in the classroom. Very, very, very practical.
What's his name? The
Mark
author?
with a C. I'll write it in the chat.
Okay.
No, it's
Great.
already there.
Oh, thank you. Andy,
sorry.
Annie is so efficient. Wonderful.
Oh, Annie, I can't see
I'm saying it. She's Googling it. And then she
Yes,
puts it in the
I am.
She's
Exactly.
sharp. We know
What's
She's
his
very
name?
sharp.
Annie, please.
it's if you look at the bottom of the screen, there's a
Oh, yeah,
chat.
Mark Brackett. Yeah,
Mark
found
Brackett.
it. Found it in the chat. Yeah. Thanks.
So you've got
Permission to
ruler,
Ah,
ruler,
yeah.
and
It's on Amazon, at least in Spain.
yeah.
Okay.
I'll be in Spain, the UK, etc. next month. So
Oh,
might
wonderful.
see you.
He's just
you're
written.
coming to Spain.
Probably
España.
every time I go to Europe, I go to Spain because I used to live there, so I miss it.
Okay, so I hope we can meet.
I hope we can agree to meet. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Ruler, mood meter.
Yeah, those are projects by Mark Brackett. I mean, he's got a lot of really interesting stuff. Like, for example, he's got a study that talks about mood and marking. So depending on the teacher's mood, marks will be different. So if you're in a good mood on Friday, you'll mark worse than you are on Saturday if you're in a good mood.
Wow.
And so how can you learn to mark, which doesn't depend on your mood?
You need a protocol, like for everything else.
Rubrics.
The same
Rubrics.
as for what you mentioned before. That
Yeah,
when something exceeds your remit, you pass it on to a psychologist, the head.
Well, in the
whoever.
case of marking, what you do is you use rubrics. So you
Absolutely.
So it's like whatever the mood you're in, you've got a measurement that you can look at, and it doesn't depend on mood. Same with job
25 years of Cambridge exam marking.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to have descriptors.
Yes.
Have your descriptors.
Exactly.
And I think with the university professor, because I said I'm frustrated because I don't know what you're looking for, and then he wrote rubric. I taught him how to write about rubrics, and then he started writing his own rubrics, and I found it really useful. Like I got 85% in his class, as compared to previously where I was getting 14 and 15, which is 70, 75. Because of his rubrics, because then I understood some of the things that he was looking at that I could that I could try for, So and then it didn't depend on his mood, whereas previously it was, he'd mark half the papers on one day, half the papers on the other day. But if you're tired and you're in a bad mood on one of the days, and you end up comparing people, comparing apples with oranges. So anyway, off the point again. So questions, thoughts, ideas?
Well,
Danny, have you got something to say?
A couple of books to buy.
Yeah.
I've actually filled 2 pages of notes here. I've got 2 pages filled.
One of the things that Elizabeth and I do with our guests is to ask them about book recommendations. But you have been recommending books all the time.
You've done it. Yeah, it's been fabulous.
I've already written down
a long list.
Brené Brown, Mark Brackett. Okay.
Yeah. Wonderful.
And the other one as well.
My budget won't stretch too much more.
Tara Moore.
Well.
Yeah.
Playing big. Yeah. Okay. Super. Amazing. That's great.
If you like podcasts, so since I've already recommended books, I'll take your question and say podcasts. So I would very highly recommend, a podcast. Well, there's a couple, but one episode. I'm going to suggest an episode. So it's with Stephen Bartlett. So if you know Dragon's Den in the UK, like Shark Tank, Stephen Bartlett is one of the investors on that. He has a podcast called Diary of a CEO, DOAC, DOAC. So if you look at DOAC, DOAC, Diary of a CEO, and he has an episode where he has a very long conversation with Brené Brown. And I would
Wow.
absolutely encourage everybody to watch that. It's a really,
Please
really,
put
really
that
good.
into the chat box.
Here. Yeah. It's on YouTube also, and on Spotify.
It's an hour and a half, something like that. Watch it on YouTube because you get to watch them rather than just listen to it.
I'm going to share the link.
Fantastic.
And then she talks of she's got a marble jar, so you'll get the marble jar thing.
Fabulous.
If you watch that. Any questions or thoughts on mentoring and coaching particularly? I think tutoring is a lot easier to understand and have in a...
I would like to add about the ages. I would like to highlight that moment when you mentioned about reverse mentoring and also asymmetric mentoring. That actually mentors can be older and they can teach and mentor younger ones. But however, it can be reverse and younger ones can be as a mentors to the older ones. I would like to say that, well, I have experienced something similar. Sometimes like people who try to come and learn English and they look at me and they, oh my goodness, she is so young. What is she going to teach me? And then after some work, they can discover that, yes, I have knowledge and I have experience and I can teach them something and they can learn a lot of things and I can make them become more autonomous. I can provide them with a lot of different resources. They just need to find their proper time to do it and work on their skills. So I would say this is something controversial.
I think with teaching particularly, and if we're teaching English language, people are much quicker to accept that a teacher in their 20s can teach students who are in their 50s and 60s. Because you obviously know a lot more English than they do, so they respect that you have that knowledge, and so they place themselves into that position. The question then is there a mentoring relationship that will come out of that? I doubt it very much. Oftentimes when it's reverse mentoring, so when the mentor is younger and the mentee is older, they tend to be project or programs which are specifically designed to support somebody older in, I don't know, skills that they don't have yet, like technology is very, very, very common. Teaching somebody who's like 60 or 70 how to use an iPad. And there's a relationship and a friendship that comes out of that, but it's a skill. It's kind of a skills relationship. It's built for that purpose, but then it becomes a satisfactory relationship for both, because there's mentoring going on both ways still, because then the older person very often will tell stories to the younger person, and the younger person also walks away learning something. So although it's an asymmetrical relationship, I think there's probably more reciprocity between a mentor and a mentee than probably there is between the coach and the coachee. I'm very conscious very often that as the coach, I'm serving my client, but there's no expectation of receiving back. Whereas in mentoring, generally you find, because you're building a relationship with somebody, there is some reciprocity in the relationship and some satisfaction in the relationship. And mentoring relationships tend to be longer very often than a coaching relationship. So coaching relationship, I contract for 3 sessions. And if it goes on for another 3 sessions, we've contracted for a further 3 sessions. And then if it goes on longer, we've contracted for another 3 sessions. And at some point, it's going to come to an end. But we're there for that purpose. We're there for the coachee. We're not there for me. So sometimes, it's like, I enjoy it because I like to see people grow. So that for me is a satisfaction. But it's not because of the relationship. At the same time, in any of the relationships, if it's not working, you end it. And there's a thing called contracting where you talk about, how does this relationship go? You say, if it doesn't work, we have a chat and we stop it. And that's fine. That's okay. You can Like you can leave. It's like that song, you know, with the Eagles. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. Well, in this one, you can leave.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're coming to the end of it.
Yes.
And we have
Sadly.
some questions that we usually ask our guest that have nothing to do with the session. So one would be, what is your greatest extravagance?
I don't know that I would say it's an extravagance, but I have a thing for notebooks and pens.
Yes.
Oh,
It's like this
Yes, I
addiction
think
to
yeah,
stationery,
definitely.
you know. And,
Oh, yeah.
Lots of people have that.
me
Yeah,
I
too.
can
definitely.
identify with that.
Yeah,
Not
me too
lately,
as
but
well.
I used.
I discovered Clairefontaine books. They're really, really good.
Okay.
They're really, really good.
Yeah,
Oh,
Notebooks,
I love them, and I love pencils. I have this thing about pencils
I don't
as
have a
well. I
thing
love
about
pencils.
pencils.
Yep,
no,
absolutely.
I'm.
So I buy it. I can't walk into a stationery without looking at them. And I have a friend who's a graphic designer. So sometimes he wants to see something in the shop and he drags me out and he's like, oh, come on, we need to
Oh
go.
gosh.
Yeah, I'm terrible also.
Yeah.
I love pencils and I love
Oh,
notebooks. I have
yeah,
lots of
and
notebooks.
love
My
them.
husband says that I am more dangerous in a bookshop and in a
Oh,
stationery
yeah.
shop than in
Yeah,
a shoe
yeah,
shop.
Yeah, I have to
it's
cover
true.
something.
Me too. I hate shopping for clothes or shoes, but I love
Oh,
shopping
no,
for notebooks, pencils.
I enjoy shopping for clothes.
Okay.
Not where I live. That's the point.
Oh, and
It's
I'll
all
tell you
sports
another
clothes
thing.
here.
Don't have it here.
Elizabeth, your
But
turn.
Okay.
now.
I bought
But
black
Yeah.
I've
post-it
managed
notes.
to
I have
Oh,
black
Oh,
post-it
integrate
notes
wow.
the
and I
notebook.
have white pens.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, so what is your, oh gosh, I've forgotten what I wanted to ask now. What's your greatest fear? That's what I wanted to ask.
Mm.
Oh my goodness. I think okay, I don't know. But I would dig into my Enneagram. So if you know the Enneagram, you know it. I'm not going to explain it. And if you don't, I'm not going to explain it because it would take too long. But in my Enneagram training that I've been taking for this last year and a half, I'm a number 4 on the Enneagram.
Wow.
And so emotionally, a number 4 withdraws if they feel threatened and they take things onto themselves, blame themselves basically, and feel that they're fundamentally flawed. Therefore, the whole thing of imposter syndrome. So I think part of what the number 4 needs, and I identify with this, is a need to be relevant. And so I think probably irrelevance would be a fear.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Not spiders.
Great.
I have a spider that comes into my window and I go, oh, hello, Mr. Spider, and just let him walk around.
Of course. Great.
What do you consider the most overrated virtue?
Oh, goodness me. Confidence.
Why?
I think true confidence has humility, but I think very often confidence is equated with arrogance, or this arrogance that makes somebody confident. We all know people who should not be as confident as they are.
Exactly. Yes, the arrogance comes out. Terrible.
Yeah,
Lots of them
it's-
in government in many countries. Yeah.
yeah. Elizabeth, the
So,
last one for you.
Neil, when and where are you happiest?
First thought that came to my mind is when I'm on the toilet. When I'm hanging out with somebody where we can have a conversation which is not superficial. this is also a need of a number 4 in the Enneagram. I think, yeah, this morning I was at a men's breakfast at church. You know, people start talking about sports and rugby and teams, and I check out because I think there's more in life to talk about than this crap.
So no World
May
Cup.
I ask it? This is a personal question, but may I ask you which
60.
church you attend?
Oh.
What denomination? What?
Currently Baptist.
If I can ask.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Baptist, evangelical.
Oh, okay, love it. Yeah. When I was living in Luton for a period many moons ago, I was alone. I'd moved down from Glasgow, and I saw people going into this church one day. It was a Baptist church, and I thought, I'm going to go in. And I went in, and I loved it, and I met lots of really nice people there who were really nice to hang out with when I wasn't working as well. It was lovely.
We did some nice things. If you're interested as well, there's a very, very good conversation from last week on the Diary of a CEO, where he talks for an hour and a half with a guy called John Lennox.
Wow.
And John Lennox is 82 years old. He is an emeritus professor at Oxford mathematics, 3 PhDs.
Wow.
And they have a very, 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 very deep conversation about faith.
Wow. Interesting.
Interesting, yes.
John Lennox is the guy who will take Richard Dawkins to town in the debate. Yeah.
Okay. So shall we take a screenshot?
Yes.
Is it okay with you? Danny?
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Danny and Lucy, you need to turn your cameras on.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, can I ask the question then after that?
No, ask please.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask about, have you ever experienced the feeling of being emotionally drained after you have met your client? And what did you do in that situation? How did you cope with that person, perhaps?
Yeah. Do you mean a specific client? Like, as a specific client and I feel drained by that person, or just generally?
Yeah, after, for example, talking to that person, you felt emotionally exhausted, that you feel, oh, this conversation has ended finally, and oh, why I'm so tired.
Yeah, not just that. There was one client that I had that I remember very specifically, and I struggled with this because then part of the coaching relationship is you're supposed to have what is called unconditional positive regard, which is something that comes straight out of therapy. If you've ever read or know who Carl Rogers is, it's Rogerian theory of what the position of the coach, what the client, the therapist or whatever should have. Unconditional positive regard. I was struggling because this person, I was finding it very difficult to have unconditional positive regard because this person was not actually able to really think and would ask questions, and the person was not able to reflect, not able to go deep, and it was highly frustrating me. So I was thinking, oh God, I've got 6 sessions with this person. This was session 3, and I was thinking, I've got 3 more sessions with this person. I don't know if I can cope. So I took it to supervision. With David Clutterbuck, and we had a conversation about how to not have that kind of client anymore, how to test the client out. Are they able to reflect that way? But yeah, definitely had that. But in a coaching relationship specifically, this is one of the reasons that my strategy was to only book 3 sessions and then reevaluate, because maybe I don't want to continue. But when those things come up, is to have somebody that you can reflect and talk about that with. We all have that with students. We all have that with the bosses. So having somebody to talk that out. And also I have a coach. I have a coach as well. So, sometimes if I'm coming up with something like that, I'll talk it out with my coach.
Okay, so thank you, Neil. Okay, so smile. I'm going to take a photo. Yeah.
Okay.
There we are. Okay. So thank you very much, Neil. Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you all.
And
yes, wonderful.
okay.
Thank you so much, Neil. Wonderful. Thank you, Neil.
Yes,
and thank you for being here, the others.
Been a privilege.
Wonderful conversation. As all conversations with Neil are, I must say.
Fabulous.
They're better with
I'm
mate.
so happy. I've got 2 pages filled with stuff here. It's fantastic. I've never tasted mate. Maybe in Lisbon next year. I will.
Maybe in Lisbon next year. Yeah, we'll take.
I hope so.
If you're ever even in the street and you see somebody with a chimarrón drinking their mate, you walk up to them and you make friends.
Yes, that's right.
Amazing.
And you say,
mate,
hey,
you have to
you're drinking mate. Oh, I've never tried mate.
Is for
and
making
say,
friends.
Sit down. Let's have some mate together, you know?
Fantastic.
Wow, fabulous.
Elizabeth, you have to come over to Patagonia.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I so want to.
Lucy, well, anyway.
Yeah.
I've got a lovely spare room. I love having guests.
My maiden name is Evans, which is a real Welsh name.
I know.
That's very Welsh.
Yeah, it is.
I can take you down. Yeah.
So you have to go to
They're
Gaiman.
farther south than me, but
Okay,
go and see the tulips in Trevelyan.
Okay.
Oh,
thanks, everyone.
Thank you to you.
So
thank you so much.
See you in September.
Bye, Danny. Bye, Danny.
Annie and Lucy, I might see you.
Have a great summer. Have a great summer.
Yes, have a great summer, everyone.
Have a great summer, winter in my case.
Yeah, in your case, winter. Yeah.
But I'm
Thank you, Annie. Thank you, Neil. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Neil. That was brilliant. Thank you so much.
Lucy, I will be around in Argentina probably August, September.
Oh, great.
Jealous, jealous.
Yes, I'm going back.
I hope to see you before. I might escape to
let me know.
I'm
Let me know
sure
if you
where
come
I'm
to.
going.
Let me know if you come to Spain.
And if you come to